This is one of the most whack stories. Um, oh my God, even. So apparently, this man was found last Thursday, the 29th. And the amount of abuse that went down. His mother reported him missing 8 years ago, right? In 2015. And so he would have been a minor at the time that he went missing, in air quotes. She then spent 8 years drugging him, making him sleep in her bed, telling him he needed to play daddy. Oh my God, Ethan. So she is essaying him. I don't know why YouTube is censoring certain expressions, certain words, things like that. It makes it very difficult to create content for all the live streamers out there that we can't even describe things that you should be able to describe. It's very bizarre that Google and YouTube are doing this bullshit, but okay, whatever. So, I'm not going to cover the whole video because obviously it's over an hour long, right? But let's cover some of where. Let me see how. Okay. Uh, let's just go back this far. I don't know where I'm landing, but
that was asked, because some of what the police interview ends up being, or the police press conference, I should say, obviously, they do their press conference and then the reporters can ask questions, and they're almost like knocking down some of his allegations that he made. Like, oh, well, we did this, or we did that. And while I do understand, I understand the law is the law, but it's so sad when you sit by.
He was found unresponsive on the steps of, I think it was like a church or something, in possession of his mother's credit card, that she had just gotten that credit card like 2 years earlier. And as you'll see, there are neighbor interviews in which they knew him. They knew him under a different name, but he was there the whole time. She was basically enslaving her son.
And it's almost like you're watching something unfold, and it's like, it is what it is. So too bad, kind of a thing. And I feel like that's 100% what went on here. But the more that we find out about this, and the more that we can find out, like, okay, verify, like, yes, this is true. I mean, you want to talk about dropping the ball? This is really bad.
You think police failed in this situation?
Oh, big time. No doubt about it. Absolutely they did.
And see, that's what I'm talking about. And probably a lot of us are kind of feeling this like,
So the black man is an activist who Rudy stepped aside with and told him everything. Told him everything that happened. And so he's acting kind of as a spokesman for Rudy right now. And apparently, I haven't gotten to this point yet, but apparently the police are going to try and like act like none of this really fucking happened, right? Because they failed. They failed. They never executed a search warrant. They never looked into this really deeply. And so this missing child has been entrapped and enslaved and raped and drugged by his mother for at least 8 years, probably longer than that. It probably started before that, because the premise that she used to brainwash him and keep him enslaved was because he had tried to run away. And so she told him that the police were looking for him and that he was in trouble, right? He probably ran away because he was already being abused before that. This is really terrifying. He was just found last Thursday, you guys.
Like, hello, what happened here? Now, as we get into further interviews with him and whatnot, you will begin to question, like, how, I mean, it doesn't make sense. There's so much unanswered with this still. Now, obviously, it's brand new, right? We're just learning about this. And there is the gray zone of him being an adult, but I'm like, he went missing as a 17-year-old, and then literally came back the next day, but nothing was ever done to rectify that situation. And sadly, again, we'll also learn that there's really not much trouble you can get into for not doing that, right? We will hear the police say it's not a crime to go missing, and I get that, but also on the other hand of it, I just feel like, where is and I don't know if the word humanity is what I'm looking for, because I understand where there's a part of this that's like, okay, look, this is the law, but what do you do when you sit by and it's like, an atrocity is going on?
Because there were several instances where calls were made about him to law enforcement, and they did not properly follow up and follow through based on the history of that address.
And yes, what he's talking about, we'll hear from other family members and whatnot, that yes, he did have several encounters with the police, and the police were called by family members, but it would always slip through the cracks, or he would be hidden by then, and that type thing, because again, it's very bizarre to be like, in this type of situation there are numerous people saying that this is a lie and calling her out on it and getting police involved, and still nothing happens.
But what I can say, it ain't no way in hell that the woman shouldn't be locked up immediately.
Aim damn in, okay? This is one thing that I like about him is he speaks the sofa language, okay? We're just real. We call it like we see it, okay? And I feel like Mr. X is this way too. And again, I mean, listening to this, that's the outrage. Why isn't she locked up? And that's what's so bizarre, because we get pivoted in the scenario of he said, she said type situation, but at the center of it is Rudy. He is the victim. And I too, like we've already heard echoed and will continue to hear, I fear for his safety.
Is she aware of these that the son told you?
Yes, she's aware. And then she goes back in there and tries to tell him, and she don't even know that was recorded. Tell him that you made it all up. That was just a lie.
You said she would ask him to play daddy. Can you just
So you heard that, there's other things, the allegations that he makes, such as this of, she goes back in there, but she doesn't know it was recorded, and she was telling him to say it was a lie, this, that, and the other. If this gentleman here has the recorded evidence that he says he does of this conversation and things like this, that he can bring out and put out there, it will blow the lid off of this.
Based on what that young man said to me in front of the detective, I don't see why she's not in handcuffs right now.
And again, amen. And this is what's so bizarre. So you hear him, the things that this young man said in front of me, in front of a detective, why isn't she arrested? And we're going to literally hear the detectives get up there and all say the complete opposite. And it pivots you to be like, what is going on already in a confusing case? Now we have a community act.
Well, I'm sorry, police department, and I think this is Texas, right? Even if you were trying to claim that, he was not mentally competent of stating the story, the fact that you had a missing child search for 8 years and he was found to be living with his mother the entire time, she needs to be locked up right the hell now.
And the Houston Police Department butting heads on what took place in this conversation, and it's just making it even that much more confusing.
And we know that Rudy and his mother left that hotel after interviewing with detectives earlier today. We have been here in their neighborhood all evening. So far tonight, no sign of them. But we are expecting an update from Houston Police on this case tomorrow.
Now, this part right here, I know I had to just literally, I was like, pick my mouth up off the ground. This part to me seems so dangerous. It seems so baffling. I have so many questions about it. Now, again, at the end of the day, it's like he is a grown up, right? But if the things that took place that this gentleman just said happen in front of a detective, why? And it will bring up questions like this, and we'll get even further into it, where I'm like, so is this kind of relationship legal? I mean, I don't think it is, not from what I've done in my little, sidebar Google search, right? I mean, this is, not...
No, Oedipus Rex shit is not legal. And the whole reason for that is, over 100 years ago, they started putting laws in place about family relationships, that you have to be a certain degree away from each other so that you don't have birth defects. I mean, there's all kinds of problems that happen from incest. And one of those things is there's an entire community that... these are descendants of Louisiana people, right? They've mostly migrated to Washington State at this point. I saw a documentary on this. And they are both deaf and blind because of the compounding problems that these things within your anatomy that can compound through repeated incest. So there's an entire community of people in Washington State who are both deaf and blind, and they have to communicate solely through touch because they have no other way of communicating.
Supposed to happen, right, by nature or by law in most states, and so that part I'm just like, okay, what? Now, that being said, let's watch some news clips of interviews with family members, neighbors, people like this, that have been interacting with this and that have personal experiences with him that can attest to, this guy's been missing. No, he's been right there.
That's right, Rudy. Neighbors tell me they saw Rudy and his mother here in their driveway at their home. They say the mother did not stay long, but she did appear to be worried about being arrested. From a distance, neighbors took video of Rudy Farias' mother loading up a car in her driveway Tuesday night.
When he first went missing, he didn't report it to the police. And they're trying to say that he might have done some crimes, which he didn't. And now they want to arrest me because they said I was hiding him.
Now, this part, again, is baffling. First of all, it's concerning that she's backing the car up, right? But then it's also concerning how much she freely talks to people about stuff that's so incriminating. It doesn't add to her story. And I'm like, has she been doing this the whole time? Clearly we know she was making up fake names and whatnot. And she was directing him, allegedly, to do the same thing. And so that part right there, I'm like, okay, now notice when she said the thing about he went missing, he didn't report it, he said he did some crimes, but he didn't. She's kind of trying to downplay that aspect a little bit. And it doesn't make sense. But remember when the activist said that she had convinced him that he was in trouble for running away? To me, it does sound like going kind of between the lines of, I'm believing this. Think about someone who is twisted, and imagine if they ran away and being like, you're in trouble now. The cops are going to come get you. But somebody really taking it to that next step of look, you're going to jail.
I'm going to hide you. I'm going to protect you from the police. But you're going to do my job for me, because she was taking him to work, right? And making him perform her job duties. You're going to perform my job responsibilities for me, and you're going to play the role of daddy and sexually satisfy me. Right? That's what she was doing. And nobody would suspect somebody who looks like that of being that fucking cruel. Unless you've watched Misery, right?
We're going to have to hide you. We're going to have to put you somewhere to keep you hidden. This was almost, whether it was planned or not, and executed that way, or if he ran away and it was an opportunistic thing for her to be like, wait a second, I can do this scheme. This is what we can move on to next. time will tell, and if this makes it to a situation of charges in court, and it does go to like a trial and whatnot, where like major evidence is brought out, then for sure we'll learn more. Now let's get into some of those clips of neighbors and whatnot. Let's watch like a little montage of some interviews and highlights.
Keisha Ross lives down the street. She knew Rudy as Dolph and saw him regularly.
He never came in my garage with a sober mind.
The neighbors also say she offered to pay them. Did it seem like she was offering money to get you?
Keep in mind, she was drugging her son. She was drugging her son to continue brainwashing him, to continue this facade that she was hiding him from the police, and to make him perform as daddy.
All to stay quiet?
Stay quiet. She wanted us to keep quiet.
But did you ever notice anything suspicious over there?
No, like when he talked to us, he doesn't like say too much on who he really is. We just know that he lives down here with his mom. He goes to work with her like around 6 p.m.
And then later on that day, I learned that he was supposed to be missing. And when I looked at the thing, my daughter pulled it up and it said he had been missing since 2015. I wasn't here in 2015, so I knew nothing about that because I watch the news every now and then. I don't watch it like that, so I never knew anything about that. That day, I discovered that he's supposed to be missing since 2015. I say, how was he missing since 2015? And I met him in 2022.
Right? I mean, this is like what most anybody would say, like, You know, the neighbors had to all be like, what in God's name, right? So, a couple of things here. First of all, the young lady we just heard from, she's like, he never had a sober mind. Now, this, as we'll learn, like, remember, Mr. Quinnell X just said she was pumping him full of drugs, she was doing this, she was doing that, you know, giving him all this stuff. So then we have a neighbor saying, okay, well, he never had a sober mind when he was at my house. You know, then she's also saying, like, this whole insinuation from the mother of, like, trying to offer money to keep them quiet, you know, and the further into the clip, and I was just getting little bits and pieces out, she does say that she was like, look, I'm not going to be lying up in here for you, you know what I'm saying, which any, like, sane person obviously would say, you know, but this whole thing about that. So then also when we hear it, I don't know if I have the clips of it, so I'll just say it now while I'm thinking of it. Yeah, but there's other things of like, oh, other people in the neighborhood said that, you know, they haven't seen him for 8 years. Well, here you go. Now, I'm not trying to say, and you know, I don't live there, I don't know any of these people, right? But if we have one person saying, she was like trying to throw money, and then some of the people in the neighborhood are like, oh no, he's been right there, and then some people are like, I haven't seen him for 8 years. I mean, maybe she got to some people is what I'm trying to say, but again, I don't know, that's just my opinion. Now, also the young lady who was like, well, look, you know, notice that all these people say the same thing. When he talks, he might be quiet, he might be shy, whatever, but he talks, because the mother would have you think that he's nonverbal, right, and can't speak or anything, or has panic attacks and this type of thing. Okay, notice also the young lady said he goes to work with his mother. Okay, like 6 at night or whatever. Now, I believe she does some kind of security job. I could be wrong. If you know, drop it in the comment section. Now, there was another interview. I do not believe I have the clip of it here, but the gentleman, it's another neighbor, whatever, was basically like, yeah, when he was over here talking, hanging out, and he like, this guy had a job, and he was like, hey, look, I'm going to hook you up. And he was like, you know, Rudy was like, no, I'm good with my job. I make more money. I get paid under the table. So it's like, is the mom taking him to work and putting him to work and then, you know, breaking him off some, basically?
That's
you know,
what it sounds like.
It's all completely confusing. But again, you see where some of these little tidbits from the neighbors are matching up to the story that Quinnell X is saying, right? More so than the police, what the police have to say, which we're about a couple of clips away. What I want to do now real quick is listen to what some family members had to say.
A woman identifying herself as Farias' aunt saying he's traumatized and, quote, he doesn't want to see his mom. Also speaking to our Houston affiliate, KPRC.
I fear for Rudy Farias' life. Everything's coming out to the light because I knew that she's been lying all this time.
Rudy's aunt, Pauline Sanchez Rodriguez, tonight is...
Now, like she said, everything will always come out to light eventually, and this is the very beginning of that. Now, you heard her, I'm scared for his life, and like her, many of us are, right? I've seen that echoed in the comment sections and whatnot, and it's your immediate gut feeling when you watch this very uneasy feeling. And we'll hear what Mr. X has to say here in a little bit when he talks about, like, look, in normal cases, like stuff like this, like the abuser's not allowed to speak to, the person and whatnot. Why is this being treated differently? Why are the cops acting like this, that, and the other? And we're getting ready. I think we're like a...
And earlier in the video, too, he says that Rudy actually ends up going home with his mom and living with her again, which is crazy as fuck. Why didn't the police arrest her? I mean, this did just happen on Thursday, so maybe they're still trying to build their case, but I can't even, you guys.
The way, maybe it's the next clip that we're going to watch. Why did this go this way? Now, I also question, because as we get deeper into this, and again, at the time, speaking of the time of this recording, which again is July 8th, it's the weekend, so this could be different depending on when you've watched this, when you are watching it, but my next question would be, well, could he go with the aunt? Could he go with this other person? Now I get, from what I understand, he allegedly has gone willingly back with the mother at this point in time. So that part's very confusing to me. Not that he's gone willingly back, because I think oftentimes in these situations, it's what you see, it's what they know. And so I can grasp that part, even though it's not what I would want for him. But that part is very confusing to me. And also it's very confusing is how these family members, how she was able to hide him away for that long, and away from some of the...
Well, yeah, I mean, but also the idea, first of all, abused people do tend to just go right back into the situation because they don't know anything else. And so the fear of the unknown is greater for them than the abuse that they're used to, right? Plus, he was being drugged, right? But yeah, the family members, if they're sane, need to step in. And he is a grown adult at this point, though. And that makes it even more challenging because he's 25 years old, right? So it makes it even more difficult because at least if they're minors, you can intervene, but it's very difficult to do that in an adult situation. You have to really prove that there's some. Well, I mean, even then, like, look at abused women, abused wives and abused husbands too. I mean, that happens too. It always comes down to their choice of whether or not it's very sad. It's very sad. I think the only protected adult segment of population when something like this is to happen is seniors, right? You can go after elderly abuse and probably intervene a little bit more effectively in a situation like that. But he's 25, so he's basically stuck in this mental mind warp where he's been drugged, he's been raped. Let me see if I can find something for you. Apparently, I can't find it right now. I can't find it. But it was about 20 years ago that I watched this documentary about this community in Washington State that was a bunch of Louisiana descendants who are all blind, deaf, and mute because of incest. I don't know how to... I don't know the appropriate search terms to find this. And Google... Oh, my squirrel's come back to visit me. Hey. Alright, so Google, YouTube, and Twitter have all become terrible in regards to their search portions of their platforms. That's all I gotta say.
Some of these family members, but you'll hear from other family members or of other family members who are like, oh no, he comes by and checks on me. And in fact, let's go ahead and watch that clip now.
It's just we've always in our hearts knew that he wasn't really
missing.
During those 8 years, his cousin, Cassandra Lopez, says she called 911 in 2018 after family members saw Farias at his mother's home. She says their grandmother told her she spoke with Rudy often. And how did those conversations go when she would talk about Rudy?
She would just say, I saw Rudy, he came to check on me, and
Okay, that's what I'm talking about. So it's like, okay, here the grandmother's like, oh, he would come to check on me, and I saw him, and this, that, and the other. And this is where we would hear one account of the police being called saying, hey, he was seen, here at the home. And again, there's always a story. Oh, it was the nephew. Oh, it was this. Oh, it was that. Now, I'm sure the mother, Rudy's mother, made sure to dodge certain people, right? And other people she seemed to be fine with. But again, that's what's so confusing about it, is that she was able to keep a charade up like this in broad daylight under everybody's noses for so long. Now, let's go ahead and move on to that press conference that the police gave. And again, I'm sitting here scratching my head over it. When I watched it, I was like, what? So we'll be revisiting some of this information we've already looked at to compare notes to what the police are saying as we go through it.
Rudy was recently identified as having previous HPD interactions, meaning that he made contact with patrol officers out on the street. However, during these contacts, fictitious names and date of births were given, misleading the officers, and Rudy would remain missing.
Now, I just wanted to put this up there so that we can hear it from, the horse's mouth type thing of, okay, yes, he had interactions, he gave fake names, he gave this and that. Now, again, this does not make me sit here and think, oh, well, he was part of the scheme or, anything like that at all, right? I believe that he was a victim, and I believe that this is it's how this goes, right? I know it's very tricky, but it's just how it goes. So let's go ahead and move on to the next clip.
After investigators talked with him yesterday, it was discovered that Rudy returned home the following day on March 8th. 2015.
Now, again, this is in reference to the original, going away, running away, where, yes, he ran away, he came home, and then you pick up the mother's side of the story, and then allegedly via, Mr. Quinnell X, that Rudy is like, oh, well, she convinced me that I was in trouble, and this, that, and the other, and then you piece together the mother saying what she said earlier about, oh, he went away, oh, they said he did crimes, but he didn't report it, the whole 9 yards. Let's continue.
The mother, Janie, continued to deceive police by remaining adamant that Rudy was still missing. She alleged her nephew was the person friends and family were seeing coming and going. However, we disputed that.
Now, at the end of this, we'll hear what she could face for doing that. And, y'all, it's literally a joke, okay? But also, we're going to hear from private investigators who worked with this whole, the missing thing, because she ran with this, right? This is like a thing. It's giving Sherry Papini, okay? Like, literally, if you follow that case, if you know what I'm talking about, then you'll know. It's literally so similar to this. I am not saying that in the context that I think he was making himself go missing, or, he was, like, helping out with it, because, again, he was a kid, right? I don't think that he was part of that, or that he was forced to be part of it, is what I should say. So, yeah, let's keep going on.
Currently, the DA has declined any charges at this time for making fictitious reports and failure to ID. Investigators have reached out to Adult Protective Services. HPD Victim Services has reached out. We've also connected Rudy with Victim Services to ensure that he has a method to recover.
Now, this is the part that had me going, what? They have not done any kind of charges, and will keep going with this, like, no charges at all, right? Even for the basic stuff. But what we would learn here in a minute that we'll find out is that, if they charge her with this kind of stuff, it really is absolutely nothing. Now, when he says, like, oh, we've gotten him hooked up with, victim services, this, that, and the other, my first thought is great, awesome, okay, this is definitely a good step. But this is a woman who was able to keep the charade going forever. Mm-hmm. Do I think that she could pull this off for some kind of like Adult Protective Services? Absolutely. She can spin this however she wants to. She's clearly done it and gotten away with it for years.
Now, based on Rudy's interview, there were no reports of sexual abuse reported. If there is a disclosure made, we will continue to investigate. Currently, the investigation is active, and there are new leads coming in. We'll continue to follow those leads.
Again, pick my mouth up off the floor. This is where I was like, okay, I don't know who to believe now. I was like, well, was, Quinnell embellishing this or making this up? Or what's up? And we'll hear his response to this here in a minute. And I went right back to being like, no, I think this is what went on, and I'm with Quinnell. Why isn't she in handcuffs? Why wasn't that done? What is going on? What lies beneath the surface with all of this? Now, what we're going to do is we're going to listen to reporters ask the detectives, the chief, some questions. Now, I'm going to say this. If you're watching this with your earbuds in, then you're going to have to really pay attention to it. But what I'm going to do is basically paraphrase the questions because it's so low you can't really hear them. And then we'll listen to the responses that whomever is giving the response, and we'll talk about that here for a second. Now, the first question that's being asked is in relation to those SA allegations as well as him being drugged by his mother. And then the reporter just goes right in for it. It's like, are you saying that, Quinnell was lying? And so now let's hear what the chief's response to this is.
Yesterday we heard from activist Quinnell X, and he made some shocking allegations that he was in the room with a detective, and he heard from Rudy firsthand. He said that there were sexual abuse allegations and that he was drugged by his mother. From what you just said today, are you saying that the activist was lying?
Basically, what we're saying is our investigation is our investigation, and we treat it the same. We're going to, our investigators were in the room, and basically, what they heard and what they interviewed, that's what we attest to in our offense reports and our investigations. And I'm not here, neither are they here to question anybody's integrity. But our integrity with the Houston Police Department stands, and we're going to report and put in offense reports what a victim or potential victim tells us, okay?
I mean, he shut that down real quick, right? And notice in the beginning right there where they started asking the question, you saw him go, I'll answer this. Like, he was like, get out of my way, I'm going to handle this one. Now, when I was listening to this originally and whatnot, I began being like, okay, I don't like this, I'm very confused. So part of me was like going down these two avenues. I'm like, okay, are they being tight-lipped on this? Which again, I get if
I'm trying to watch this, and I got a squirrel stalking my breakfast right now. He's all over my balcony. He's posing for me. He's wanting me to take pictures of him. And he's trying to get to my chicken soft taco. Sweetheart. No, this is not the time.
Cops have to keep stuff close to them so that it doesn't mess an investigation of all that type of stuff. I get it, right? We will learn it eventually. But there's something that feels different about this case in that way. And so I was like, well, are they doing this so they don't scare her off? We already saw a video of her with the car and all that kind of stuff. So I'm like, well, are they trying to get some charges together and they don't want her to run off or do anything else? And so that's why they're saying these things, to throw her off, basically. So I'm like, okay, I can get down with that, right? But he's still in her care, you know what I'm saying? So that part it literally has me baffled. Now, in the next clip we're going to ready to watch, the reporter reiterates asking, if nothing about SA was reported. So let's again listen to the investigator's response about this. They go into a little bit more about it.
Just to be clear, in that room, the detective did not hear anything about sexual abuse allegations. Can you just clear that up?
Yeah, Sergeant Stephanie Menace. Yes, I interviewed him, and no, there was no, I'm trained to listen for probable cause. I'm trained to listen for statements that can help me get charges or move forward with a case.
It's not about what you're trained for, asshole. He didn't feel comfortable telling you what happened. He told the activist instead. All you have to do is now ask him to corroborate it. God damn it, dude.
And no, there was no statements made during this investigation so far, no.
Thank you. Next question. Go ahead, Mario.
Now, this is the part that I was like, what? Again, I say what throughout this whole damn video because it literally has me baffled. This was so confusing to me because I'm like, but we just heard Quinnell say this. Now, again, you have to play devil's advocate up here of well, was he being embellishing? Where did this come from? What took place? And again, he wasn't telling us everything because he was disturbed by some of the stuff that Rudy said. So he was like, I'm keeping this I'm not going to put that out there like that type situation, right? Not my place type thing, but you can put two and two together and figure out what was taking place between the mother the sun on some of this stuff. And again, that's where I'm just like, well, okay, why wouldn't there be any charges for that? Even if it was like, no, it's a willing thing. I mean, that's illegal, right? And so this part just has me baffled. And again, it clearly has Quinnell baffled too, because when we hear back from him again in a minute, after he apparently heard this, you're going to hear his outrage over it.
Oh my God.
The investigation is still going on, Courtney, and I'm not going to say if he's a victim or not. I'm thinking, you know, and saying we're going to treat this just as we do with any potential victim or victim, and we're going to give respect to everybody that's involved. We're going to conduct our investigation, and we kind of...
Really? You just found a child that was missing for 8 years, who is now an adult, and has confided in an activist that he was being sexually violated by his mother, imprisoned and drugged. And you're just like, I don't know. Right?
Right at the beginning of it. This investigation is going to go on after this press conference.
Now, while he is correct, this investigation is in its infancy, but I still have lots of questions. Now, one thing I wanted you to take note with this clip that we just watched is when he says, I'm not going to call him a victim yet or whatever. Very interesting choice of words. And again, I understand where an investigation needs to take place, but what has me baffled with this, and amongst other things, and we'll hear from Quinnell again when he says this, is, you know, why are we treating what is seemingly, you know, let's just call it a domestic violence situation, right? But it's so much deeper than that, right?
I mean, even if you take away all of the other context and think that he just like imagined it, it didn't really happen. The fact is, his mother reported him missing at age 17. And then he reappeared with her credit card at age 25. So yes, he was a victim. There's no disputing this. Because it was never updated with you, police department. He was never reported found. And he was being told to use false identities so that she could continue doing whatever it was that she was doing in that household.
That's not how it goes down usually. Why is this being treated differently? I have the same question.
But we don't have any information to say that there's any kind of kidnapping or anything like that right now. Okay?
Have any search warrants been served at the house?
I think it's no search warrants.
No, at the time he was reported missing 8 years ago, being missing is not a crime. So the detectives had no lawful means or probable cause to issue a search warrant for the residence, which was searched several times.
Now, again, remember that whole comment about the search warrants earlier in the clips that we watched, and now you hear the reporters. Obviously, they're going to be latching on this stuff that they heard from Quinnell and questioning this, and you hear the cops like, oh, it's not a crime to be missing, you know, but one would think the way he worded this is she let them search the house. You know, now he doesn't say that, those were my words, but he's like, but the house was searched several times. Okay, well, clearly when whatever would take place is she was hiding him somewhere and whatnot, right? Now, I guess my next question is, well, wasn't his stuff around, like to the point that you could tell it was like being lived in? You know, it doesn't make sense. Again, it just seems like this whole scenario was almost like people going over there and checking off a box. Yep, okay, we went and did our little due diligence. Now let's beat it, you know, type thing. It's very, very confusing as to how this went on for so long.
That was in March 7th, 2015.
Every one of these investigators should be fired. This is, it's outrageous that this happened. And it's outrageous that they're now trying to be like, I don't know, like, it was, you know, he could be allowed to run away from home, and the fact that he actually never did, and he was being entrapped by his mother and told to use false identities and stuff, and he was living with her the whole time, and we just couldn't figure this out. we couldn't crack the case. So, but we need to have a press release, a press conference, in which we're like, oh, well, I don't know that any laws were broken. Are you for real? Every single one of you should be fired.
So there was a missing persons report that was filed.
Correct.
And so this is what I'm asking on this. Could the mother be detained for filing a missing persons report and never once informing HPD that he came home?
Yes, she could be reported or detained. That offense is a Class C misdemeanor, which is similar to a traffic citation.
Oh my God.
Now, the part that they were being asked was, these charges of not reporting or, failure to say, like, hey, he's back home, whatever, like this lying type thing. And you hear that it's like a traffic citation, which I'm just like, really? I mean, it's so weird in this true crime that we watch, like some of the things we learn.
I don't know. When I have a traffic citation, which isn't very frequently, because I'm actually a pretty good driver, you guys. But when I have gotten, like, a ticket for, like, a vehicle violation, like maybe I didn't get my registration completed on time or something like that, there's not a billboard on the side of the goddamn highway about it. This isn't as low level as a traffic citation. God, these people are assholes. You literally had a billboard on the side of the highway looking for this missing child. Are you for fucking real?
I'm like, you can do that? Or, that's not, like, you get it, like, that's major to me, right? Like, that's major. And it's like, you just get, that? Okay, well, all right, well, let's keep going then. And on that note, let's turn our attention back to Mr. Quinella X during another conference interview that he gave after this, right? When he's basically responding to a lot of the things that were said in it. And we're going to start off with a montage of some highlights of it. It really captures the moment, and I think what we're all probably thinking and feeling.
Absolute liars.
Oh, man.
That man heard everything that I heard.
These are blessed waters from my mom.
I'm standing here speaking the truth of what Rudy said to me. And I'm standing here fighting for that young man. I cannot believe, and I refuse to believe, that there's not a single charge that they can come up with to put this woman in jail, so a judge can tell her you can have no contact with the victim, just like you do in domestic violence cases. When the question was asked, was there a sexual relationship? The sergeant lied in his response. And then the next question was there a sexual relationship between the mother and her son? They refused to answer that question and said he's a victim, and we protect all sexual assault victims. See, they know what I'm saying is the truth. That dirty, low-down damn cop was right there with me. Why didn't you say, well, from what we know, there was no sexual relationship? You so freely saying that there was no sexual abuse reported. So what are you suggesting? Because he was of age, he gave consent? Is that what you're trying to suggest? For that cop to hear about all the drug abuse, and he ain't do nothing to get that boy no help, that woman should be under the jail. I'm telling you for a fact what this young man said to me. And I'm going to leave it at this. HPD, don't try me. Because I got it on record what he said to me.
Woo! I mean, he swept the floor with some truth right there.
Okay, I'm going to wrap it up here because my video portion with my commentary is getting a bit too long. But I will drop the link. So right there, I'm going to copy link. And I'll put that in the description of the video if you want to see the whole, what is this guy's channel? Reporting live from my sofa. I just started following on this video, right? Like, so I don't really know much about this guy. It looks like he's another true crime channel, But this is super fresh. This just happened on Thursday. So that would have been the 6th, like July 6th, y'all, of 2023. Okay. What a crazy ass story, you guys. Oh my God.